Richard Goodall's story doesn't begin on a stage or under bright lights. It starts in a quiet town in Indiana where life moves at a steady, predictable pace. Born in 1969, he grew up surrounded by the familiar rhythms of Midwestern life: hard work, close-knit community, and modest expectations. Music wasn't something he was formally taught or trained in. There were no vocal coaches, no recitals, and no grand ambitions tied to singing. Instead, his earliest connection to music came from something simple: a stereo in his bedroom and the habit of singing along to whatever played on the radio. That private space became his first stage, where he experimented with his voice without judgment or pressure. Over time, what started as a personal hobby quietly developed into something more meaningful. Still, Richard never imagined music as a career. It was simply something that made his days better. In a world that often celebrates loud beginnings, his was almost invisible. But that quiet start would later become one of the most compelling parts of his journey: the idea that something extraordinary can grow from the most ordinary circumstances. A life built on routine and dedication. For more than 2 decades, Richard built a life defined not by fame, but by consistency. He worked as a janitor in the local school system, spending his days cleaning classrooms, maintaining hallways, and helping wherever he was needed. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest, and he took pride in doing it well. His routine rarely changed: early mornings, long days, and often being the last person to leave the building. Over time, he became a familiar presence to students and staff alike. But what truly set him apart wasn't just his reliability, it was his voice. As he worked, he sang, not for attention, not for recognition, but simply because he loved it. Students would pause in hallways just to listen, sometimes surprised that such a powerful voice came from someone in such an unassuming role. To them, he wasn't just a janitor, he was someone special. Even so, Richard never tried to turn that admiration into something bigger. He stayed grounded, focused on his job and the relationships he built each day. His life may have seemed ordinary on the surface, but beneath it was a quiet passion that never faded. Balancing fame and familiarity. Adjusting to life after a major win isn't always easy, especially when expectations come from every direction. For Richard, the challenge wasn't just about managing opportunities, it was about maintaining balance. He began splitting his time between his hometown and California, where performances and appearances required his presence. Despite the increased attention, he kept his routine as steady as possible. Mornings were still simple, often spent with Angie, and he made an effort to stay connected to the people and places that had always grounded him. Even as new opportunities came in, he didn't rush into every offer. Instead, he chose carefully, focusing on what felt meaningful rather than what seemed impressive. This slower, more intentional approach allowed him to adjust without feeling overwhelmed. It also reinforced the idea that success doesn't have to be rushed. By staying connected to his roots, he created a sense of stability that helped him navigate the changes in his life. It wasn't about rejecting fame, it was about reshaping it to fit who he already was. Building a music path on his own terms. Rather than chasing quick success, Richard began shaping a music career that reflected his personal style. He leaned toward genres that felt natural to him, focusing on emotional delivery rather than technical showmanship. Instead of immediately releasing albums or signing major deals, he started small, working with local musicians, rehearsing and recording demo tracks at a comfortable pace. His goal wasn't to dominate the charts, it was to create music that felt honest. This approach may not have generated constant headlines, but it allowed him to grow as an artist without pressure. He also performed selectively, choosing events that aligned with his values. Whether it was a local concert or a special appearance, he treated each performance as an opportunity to connect rather than impress. That mindset shaped the way audiences experienced his music. They weren't just watching a performer, they were witnessing someone who genuinely cared about what he was sharing. In an industry often driven by speed and visibility, his patience stood out as something rare and intentional, choosing meaning over momentum. One of the most notable aspects of Richard's journey is his willingness to turn down opportunities that didn't feel right. After his rise to fame, he received offers for endorsements, appearances, and collaborations that could have quickly expanded his public presence. But instead of saying yes to everything, he evaluated each option carefully. If something didn't align with his values or his vision, he declined. This wasn't about rejecting success, it was about defining it on his own terms. He made it clear that music, for him, wasn't just a career move, it was a form of expression. That perspective influenced every decision he made. By prioritizing meaning over momentum, he avoided the burnout that often comes with rapid fame. It also allowed him to maintain a sense of control over his path. Rather than being shaped by the industry, he shaped his own journey within it. This approach may have slowed his rise in some ways, but it ensured that every step forward felt genuine and sustainable. His lasting connection with people. Even as his audience grew, Richard never lost the connection that first made his story so compelling. He continued to engage with his community, staying in touch with former students and colleagues who had supported him long before the spotlight found him. That connection extended beyond personal relationships. It became part of how people viewed him. To many, he represented something more than talent. He represented perseverance, humility, and authenticity. His story resonated because it felt real. It wasn't about overnight success or dramatic transformation. It was about consistency, patience, and staying true to oneself. That message carried through every performance and every interview. People didn't just admire his voice, they related to his journey. In a world where success stories often feel distant or unattainable, his felt grounded and possible. It reminded people that extraordinary outcomes don't always require extraordinary beginnings. Sometimes they come from simply doing something you love every single day. Continuing the journey without losing direction. Richard's journey is still unfolding, but the path he's chosen is already clear. He isn't chasing headlines or trying to maintain constant visibility. Instead, he's building something steady and meaningful, one step at a time. Upcoming performances and music projects reflect a deeper commitment to his craft, but they're approached with the same care and intention that has guided him from the beginning. He hasn't rushed to redefine himself, nor has he tried to fit into expectations placed on him by others. Instead, he continues to move forward in a way that feels natural. That consistency is what makes his story stand out. It's not just about where he started or what he achieved, it's about how he chose to handle everything in between. By staying grounded and focused, he's created a journey that feels both inspiring and believable. And perhaps that's what leaves the strongest impression. The idea that success doesn't have to change who you are, it can simply reveal it more clearly.